The stars were quiet again, but the galaxy would never be the same. After the Battle of Kestrel Rift, the Galactic Empire no longer ruled unchallenged. The Concordance, once seen as the ultimate power across thousands of worlds, now stood divided. Some species clung to the old ways. Others looked forward, toward something new, toward humanity. Back on Earth, life was different. People still woke up, went to work, raised their kids, and watched the sunset. But now, they did it knowing that their world had changed not just for themselves, but for the entire universe. Children dreamed not just of becoming astronauts or scientists, but diplomats, explorers, and leaders of a new kind of peace. Schools taught lessons not only about human history, but about the Aravians, the Korath, the Virex, and how all species could learn from each other. And at the center of it all stood Leora Vance. She didn't want power. She never had. But she knew someone had to lead this next chapter, so she helped form the Terran Accord, a new alliance open to any species willing to stand side by side, not above or below. No rulers, no masters, just equals. The rules were simple. Every voice matters. Technology is shared, not hoarded. Peace is protected, not forced. Freedom is earned through trust, not conquest. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. Some species hesitated, some refused. A few even tried to sabotage the idea, afraid that if humans led the way, their own power would fade. But others saw the truth. They saw what Earth had done. Not just win a battle, but build a better way. Aravian scholars joined human universities to study together. Korath engineers worked with Earth scientists to grow food on dead planets. Even some Virex diplomats returned, not as watchers, but as partners. The galaxy was changing, slowly, carefully, but it was changing. Captain Elena Reyes became the first commander-in-chief of the Interstellar Defense Fleet. She didn't like being called a hero, but she accepted the role because she knew peace needed protection. Under her leadership, the fleet stayed small, but strong. Not built for war, but ready for danger. She trained pilots from every species, taught them not just how to fight, but how to talk, how to listen, how to choose peace when they could. Her favorite saying became a motto for many. We don't carry weapons to start fights. We carry them so we can finish them. Reyes led missions not to conquer but to protect, to help colonies in need, to stop pirates before they struck, to remind the galaxy that strength doesn't mean control, it means care. And slowly, people began to believe her. On New Eden, the capital planet of the Terran Accord, a great hall was built, not for kings or generals, but for voices. It was called the Hall of Unity, just like the one back in Thalzar Prime. But this one was different. There were no thrones, no crowns, no high seats for the powerful, only a circle of chairs, each one for a species, each one equal. When the first meeting began, dozens of ambassadors sat around the table. Humans, Aravians, Korath, Virex, even a few Zalari who had left their empire. Behind, Leora stood at the center and spoke softly. We are here not because we are the strongest, not because we are the oldest, but because we chose to try, together. No one interrupted. No one argued. They simply listened. Then they talked. Not about war, not about borders, but about trade, education, medicine, space travel, music, art, about life. And for the first time in history, the galaxy didn't speak with one voice. It spoke with many, and it sounded beautiful. But not everything was easy. Old wounds take time to heal. Old enemies don't always change overnight. Some parts of the former Galactic Concordance refused to join the Terran Accord. They called it foolish, naive, weak. A few even tried to attack human colonies, hoping to break the dream before it grew. Too strong, but each time the response was the same. Peace first, defense second. Victory only when necessary, and always an offer to talk. Some took it, others didn't. But over time, even the hardest hearts began to soften because they saw something in humanity they hadn't expected. Hope, not loud, not flashy, just steady, like the rising sun. Years passed, generations came and went, but the message remained. Humanity had walked out of a room where they weren't treated as equals, and instead of giving up, they built their own table. One where everyone had a seat, where every voice mattered, where the future wasn't owned by the past but shaped by those brave enough to imagine something better. And in the end, that's what changed the galaxy. Not weapons, not ships, not power, but choice. The choice to stand up, the choice to walk away, the choice to build something new, and the choice to invite others to sit down beside them. Today, if you travel far enough into space, you'll find it. A quiet planet orbiting a quiet star. New Eden. At its heart, the Hall of Unity. And inside? Voices. Many voices. Talking, laughing, dreaming, together. And somewhere, standing near the window watching the stars, is a woman named Leora Vance, smiling, knowing the galaxy is finally listening, and for once, it's listening to us. Humanity had always looked up at the stars and dreamed. For thousands of years, people told stories about aliens, spaceships, and distant planets. But those were just dreams. Until one day they weren't. It happened on a quiet Tuesday in the year 2147. A group of scientists working on Mars picked up a strange signal coming from deep space. At first, they thought it was just another glitch, something broken in the equipment. But then the signal repeated, clear, strong, and most importantly, intelligent. It wasn't random noise, it was a message. That message changed everything. Back on Earth, governments went into panic mode. Scientists rushed to decode the signal. Soldiers were put on high alert. People around the world watched the news non-stop, waiting for answers. Was this really proof that we weren't alone? 3 weeks later, the answer came. A massive alien ship appeared near Neptune. It was huge, bigger than any human-made structure. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, and it moved silently through space. No weapons fired, no demands made. Just arrival. Earth held its breath. After days of tense discussions, Earth finally sent a team into space to meet the visitors. They were scared, unsure what to expect. Would these beings be friendly? Dangerous? Even recognizable as life? The first meeting took place on board the alien ship. The humans stepped inside and found themselves in a room filled with soft light and floating screens. The aliens weren't what anyone expected. Some looked almost human. Others were nothing like anything seen before. Some had glowing skin, some had no mouths, some didn't even walk, but floated. But they spoke. Not in words, not at first, but in thoughts, translated into English by a small device each human wore. One of the aliens introduced itself as Theron, a representative of the Virex Collective. He explained that Earth had been noticed because of our radio signals, satellites, and space missions. We were being invited into a larger community, a galactic concordance, a group of hundreds of species who shared knowledge, trade, and peace across the stars. To many on Earth, it sounded like science fiction come true. Months of preparation followed. Humanity debated whether to accept the offer. There were fears, of course, fears of invasion, of losing control, of getting tricked. But there was also hope. Hope for new technology, for peace beyond borders, for a future among the stars. In the end, humanity said yes. Now came the next big question. Who would speak for all of Earth? A global council was formed to choose an ambassador. Thousands applied. Politicians, soldiers, scientists, teachers, even astronauts. But after months of interviews, tests, and debates, the final choice was someone unexpected. Her name was Leora Vance. She wasn't a soldier or a politician. She was a scientist and a diplomat. She had spent her life studying how different cultures could live together peacefully. She once stopped a riot in Nairobi using only calm words and courage. She believed in listening more than speaking, in understanding before judging. She was chosen not because she fit the usual image of power, but because she represented what humanity could become. When Leora boarded the Virex ship that would take her to the galactic capital, millions watched. Children waved flags, leaders gave speeches, music played in every city. It was like watching history breathe. The journey through space was unlike anything she had imagined. The ship used something called quantum slipstreaming, which Leora described as falling through light. The stars stretched into lines and time felt both fast and slow. 6 weeks passed in what felt like a dream. When the ship landed on Thalzar Prime, the capital planet of the Galactic Concordance, Leora stepped onto alien soil for the first time. Her heart pounded, but she kept her face calm. The city around her was alive with color and sound. Towering buildings floated above the ground. Creatures of all shapes walked the streets, some with 4 eyes, some with no legs, some that looked like clouds with voices. Music came from nowhere and everywhere. Lights danced like living things. She was taken to the Hall of Unity, where the High Council met. It was a round room with seats arranged like the rings of an atom. Each seat belonged to a different species. She sat down in her chair labeled simply Earth. At the center sat the Grand Arbiter, a being so old no one knew their name anymore. They introduced themselves only as the Keeper of Balance. He welcomed Leora in perfect English and said something that stayed with her forever. You are here not because you are powerful. You are here because you are unpredictable. The meetings began. Leora listened more than she spoke. She asked questions, learned names, tried to understand the galaxy's long history. Some representatives were kind. Others ignored her completely. A few treated her like a child in a grown-up world. One delegate from a reptilian race called the Zilari openly mocked her during a session. What can a species that still fights wars over land and resources teach us about unity? He asked, clearly trying to embarrass her. Leora didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled and replied, Maybe we can teach you what it means to try again, even after failing. Silence followed, then quiet laughter from a few delegates. Even the Zilari couldn't hide a smirk. Over time, Leora earned respect, not because she demanded it, but because she showed up every day ready to learn, to listen, and to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. Human engineers started working with alien scientists. Artists from Earth shared their music and paintings with beings who had never heard anything like it. Farmers taught alien colonies how to grow food in harsh environments. Slowly, humanity began to prove that they weren't just there for show. They were there to contribute. They were there to belong. But not everyone liked what was happening. Behind closed doors, whispers grew louder among older species. Humans were moving too fast, learning too quickly, making too many friends. They don't know their place, one senator from the bird-like Aravians said in private. They'll forget who let them sit at the table, muttered a Zilari general. Still, Leora and the rest of humanity kept pushing forward. They didn't ask for power. They didn't demand control. They just wanted a fair chance. And for a while, it seemed like the galaxy was giving it to them. Until the day they realized that sitting at the table didn't mean you were truly welcome. That day was coming, but for now the humans had their seat and they intended to use it. The Galactic Council had always been a place of politics, deals, and quiet power struggles, but for Leora Vance it was also a test. Every day was a battle not just to be heard, but to prove that Earth belonged among the stars. And for a while, things were going well. Humanity was learning fast, making friends, sharing ideas, and earning respect where they could. But then came the Trade Accord of Thalzar, a treaty that would decide whether Earth's colonies would be treated as equals or as junior partners in the galactic economy. The proposal was simple on paper. Earth's growing colonies across the outer systems would gain access to advanced alien technology, better trade routes, and protection under the Concordance military alliance. In return, Earth would pay higher tariffs, limit its military development, and accept oversight from an alien council. It sounded fair, until you looked closer. Leora read the fine print late at night in her quarters on Thalzar Prime. The more she studied the agreement, the more she realized the truth. This wasn't partnership. It was control. Humanity wouldn't be joining the galaxy as equals. It would be signing away its freedom in exchange for scraps. She brought up her concerns during the next meeting. She asked for changes, fairer terms, equal rights, shared responsibility. But the other representatives barely listened. Some rolled their eyes, others laughed. One even said, "You should be grateful we're giving you a seat at all." That was when Leora knew something was wrong, not just with the treaty, but with the whole system. She tried again the next day, speaking calmly, offering compromises. Still, the same cold stares, the same dismissive tones. No one wanted to hear what she had to say. They weren't treating her like a diplomat. They were treating her like a child who didn't understand how the real world worked. On the third day, the final vote was called. The treaty would pass with or without human approval. Leora stood, up from her chair, heart pounding. She looked around the room at the reptilian Zalari, the floating Aravians, the ancient Zalari generals. None of them met her eyes. She reached for the translation device on her ear, the small tool that let her speak and understand alien languages, and slowly took it off. Silence fell over the chamber. Then, in clear, steady, universal basic, Leora spoke. "If we are not equals, then we will not sit at your table." And with that, she walked out. Behind her, every human delegate followed. The moment hit the galactic news like a bomb. Some called it a dramatic exit. Others called it childish. A few saw it as the first crack in humanity's place among the stars. Back on Earth, the reaction was mixed. Some people cheered, others panicked. If humans left the Galactic Concordance, what would happen? Would Earth lose access to advanced medicine, faster travel, alien allies? Trade routes began to close. Embargoes were placed on human ships. Alien companies pulled out of joint projects. Overnight, Earth found itself isolated. In some ways, it felt like the end, but in others, it fee. The days after walking out of the Galactic Council were some of the hardest for humanity. Back on Earth, people felt the weight of their decision almost immediately. Trade routes that once brought alien goods to human markets were shut down. Advanced medicines became harder to get. Some space colonies faced shortages of fuel and supplies. Alien allies who had once smiled at human ambition now turned cold or silent. It was like being left out in the dark, alone, and suddenly aware of how much they had relied on the galaxy's goodwill. Leora Vance returned to Earth not as a politician, but as a leader trying to hold things together. She didn't want pity or blame. She wanted action. At first, there was fear. Fear that Earth would fall behind, that other species would crush them, that they had made a mistake by leaving. But then came the idea. If the galaxy won't help us, we'll help ourselves. And so began what many later called the Great Build. Human engineers, scientists, and thinkers gathered from every corner of the planet and beyond. The ISC, the Interstellar Sovereignty Council, was formed to manage this new chapter of human history. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. In secret labs and orbiting stations, humans worked day and night. They improved their AI systems so ships could fly faster and smarter without needing constant control from pilots. They perfected quantum communication so messages could travel across light years instantly. They built new kinds of energy shields and weapons, not for war but for protection. On Mars, a massive shipyard opened. On Luna, a research base grew into a full city. In the asteroid belt, mining operations expanded to fuel the growing needs of human space. Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, places like New Eden, Vega 9, and Kepler 452b, people started living differently. They created councils where everyone had a voice. They shared resources instead of hoarding them. They welcomed aliens who wanted to live in peace no matter where they came from. Word spread fast. Soon, Refugees from oppressed worlds started showing up at human-controlled space. A group of Oravian dissidents fled their strict society and asked for asylum. A Korath engineer offered his knowledge of crystal-based engines in exchange for a home. Even a few Zalari soldiers defected, tired of fighting wars for leaders who never saw them as people. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were becoming something new. Back in the Galactic Concordance, the older powers watched all this unfold with growing unease. "They're moving too fast," said a Zalari general during a closed-door meeting. "They're making friends where they shouldn't," muttered an Oravian senator. One Virex diplomat, who had once been friendly toward Earth, warned, "If we don't act soon, we may lose more than just influence." But inside the Galactic Empire, fear was spreading faster than strategy. Because while the Concordance debated and delayed, humanity was doing something dangerous. They were building trust, not through force or money, but through fairness. A colony of insect-like Korath showed up at Vega 9, asking if they could trade food for medicine. Instead of charging them double like most alien traders did, the humans gave them both and asked only one thing in return: "Help us learn your ways." An Oravian artist arrived at New Eden, unsure if she'd be accepted after speaking out against her government. She was given a studio, a place to stay, and even invited to teach at a local school. Stories like these spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, beings who had long suffered under the rule of ancient empires began to wonder, could Earth be different? Could it be better? Some laughed at the idea. Others ignored it. But a few, just a few, started looking at the stars and thinking, maybe I should go there. Then came the real turning point. A small human fleet, led by Captain Elena Reyes, responded to a distress call from a remote mining station near the edge of known space. The station was under attack by pirate ships, fast, brutal, and unafraid of targeting anyone. Reyes didn't hesitate. Her crew fought off the pirates with skill and courage, saving hundreds of lives. When it was over, the station's workers, mostly non-humans, asked her why she helped. She looked at them and said, "Because that's what we do." That moment was recorded and shared across dozens of systems. It became a symbol of what humanity stood for. Not power, not pride, but action. More and more people began to see that maybe, just maybe, humans weren't the weak newcomers they once were. They were builders, protectors, hope. Still, danger loomed. The Galactic Empire wasn't blind to what was happening. They saw the alliances forming, the technology rising, the respect growing. And they didn't like it. Behind palace walls and shadowed meetings, plans began to take shape. "We gave them a seat at the table," said a high-ranking Zalari officer. "Now they think they can build their own." "They've gone far enough," growled a Zalari admiral. "It's time we remind them who's really in charge." But before any moves could be made, another message arrived. This one from deep within the Perseus arm. It was short, but powerful. "We are ready to fight, too." Signed by the leaders of 3 independent colonies, and backed by thousands of volunteers willing to defend this new way of life. Humanity had walked out of the council. Now they were ready to stand their ground. No longer guests. No longer students. They were players now, and the game was changing. The message had been clear. We are ready to fight. It came from the colonies in the Perseus arm, places like Vega 9, New Eden, and Kepler 452b. These weren't just human settlements anymore. They were home to Oravians, Korath, even a few Virex who had chosen peace over politics. Together they stood for something new. Freedom, fairness, and the right to build their own future. But not everyone liked what was happening. Back in the heart of the Galactic Concordance, the old powers grew more nervous every day. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Their ships were faster, their technology was smarter, their ideas were spreading, and worst of all, they were winning hearts. Some species began asking questions no one had dared ask before. Why? Do we follow the same rules? Why can't we choose our own path? To the Galactic Empire, this wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. They couldn't let it continue, so they made a decision, one that would change everything. It started with an ultimatum. A massive Zilari warship appeared near Vega 9, its dark hull glowing with energy weapons. Behind it, dozens of smaller ships formed a line across the sky. It wasn't an attack, not yet, but it was close enough. A message came through. Return to the Galactic Concordance under full oversight, or face sanctions enforced by military force. The leaders of the Interstellar Sovereignty Council, ISC, gathered in secret on New Eden. Leora Vance was there, older now but still as sharp as ever. Captain Elena Reyes stood beside her, hands clenched into fists. This was it. Either they backed down, or they fought back. Some wanted peace at any cost. Others argued for retreat, for hiding in the outer systems until the storm passed. But Leora knew better. We didn't come this far, she said, voice steady. To give up now. Reyes nodded. Then we prepare for war. Preparation meant everything. Human engineers worked night and day. AI-driven defense systems were upgraded. Old mining ships were turned into fighters. Colonists volunteered in droves. Even kids helped where they could, building parts, sending messages, cooking food for soldiers. Across human-controlled space, people joined together like never before. Even some alien allies stepped forward. Aravian pilots offered their skills. Korath engineers shared their crystal-based tech. A small group of Virex scientists arrived with secrets about Zilari shield patterns. They weren't fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for something bigger. For a chance to live free. For the right to be different. For the dream of a galaxy, where power didn't mean control, and strength didn't mean fear. The battle came sooner than expected. It was called the Battle of Kestrel Rift, a name that would echo across the stars for generations. Kestrel Rift was a quiet region of space between two dead stars. No planets, no trade routes. Just cold silence and deep shadows. Perfect for ambush. The Zilari fleet arrived first, sleek and deadly. Hundreds of ships filled the void. At their center was the Dread Spire, the largest warship ever built by the HFY Concordance. A moving fortress with enough firepower to destroy entire moons. Behind them came the Zilari strike wings, fast and deadly, circling like wolves. They thought they had already won. They thought humanity would run. They were wrong. From behind the asteroid belt, the human fleet emerged, smaller, younger, but ready. Captain Reyes stood at the front aboard the Freedom's Edge, the flagship of the ISC. Around her were hundreds of volunteers, pilots, soldiers, farmers turned fighters, all ready to defend their homes. She gave the order, launch the swarm. Dozens of small, fast ships shot forward, not just human ones, Oravian scouts, Korath drones, even repurposed cargo shuttles armed with homemade weapons. They moved like bees. Fast, unpredictable, impossible to hit all at once. At first, the Zilari laughed. Then they started losing ships. AI-guided fighters danced through enemy fire. Human-built drones used decoys and tricks to confuse enemy sensors. Korath crystal mines exploded silently in the dark, turning empty space into a battlefield. The Dreadspire fired wave after wave of energy beams, but the human fleet kept coming. They didn't fight like the